What's going on, people? Lunar Nation is back with another episode. Today, we're going to talk about the hottest topic I think that's going on in the industry is EVs and autonomous vehicles. We're going to discuss, are EVs driving us or are we driving EVs? How's the trend shifting for the major constructions in the whole realm of EVs? How did it came into existence, and what are we trying to achieve out of it? What kind of obstacles are we going to face? And just see how and where the EV realm lies at this point. We got Arrow, Franz, and Sagoon with us back again
Yo,
for another
yo,
episode.
back in the house. Yes,
What's
sir.
up, people? What's up? How's it going? I didn't
Good,
hear
good,
from
good.
Arrow, man.
Good. I'm
What's up,
chilling. I'm
Arrow?
chilling.
like Franz's famous word toupee.
Toupee. Yay,
And my
yay. That
and
chill
my
like a
famous word,
toupee.
so you know.
All right. Well, as you know, let's see what you guys have. If you guys have, put in your initial 2 cents about it. What do you know about EVs and autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, I could start. For me, EVs are basically something that is controlled by a battery itself. It has a battery that's large enough so that cars can drive from that battery itself. And then from my perspective, autonomous vehicles is uh, artificial intelligence that basically you can use in a car, and you don't have to drive it yourself, and it can go from point A to B using sensors and the logic behind it. So that's kind of it's not the most like definitive way, but that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, yeah. I understand what you're saying, Sugun. So I mean, basically, EV is an electrical vehicle that is operated by an actual human, whereas an autonomous car, depending, because I know there's certain levels to autonomous vehicles. There's certain features, and then there's obviously like full autonomous, where it's self-driven by an AI, which basically the person has almost no control of it. And it's just driven by a robot. It's just a predetermined destination that you would enter in the GPS, and the car would operate on its own.
Exactly. So point A to point B itself. So
All right, good points, good points. So I'm thinking let's start off by how EVs, the inception of EVs came into existence and how they started up. I think the guy's name was Richard Anderson or something, or Robert Anderson, who developed the first EV in back in like 1830s. Um, they did not gain popularity until 1900s when we had a period of time when EVs were significant. That was 1900s to 1912s, and then they were actually a third of all the vehicles on the roads in the USA were EVs at that point. That's a fun fact. I don't think a lot of people know about that
no,
because
I
we're
Wait,
actually
so hold up. You're saying back then a third of the vehicles were EV? Is that what you're saying?
yes, back then in the
Okay,
1900s
interesting.
to 1910, that was a third of the vehicles were EVs. Like
I
people
see.
are EVs are gaining popularity right now. They were popular back then as well. And then all of a sudden, but when the gas engine came in and the oil happened in the Gulf, they all disappeared because they wanted to make
Also,
money.
also, also, I want to add that's a good point, Harsh. I also want to add it's also because of the Henry Ford as well, and the whole idea of gas being the cheaper way. The most
No,
accessible.
no. I would like to go. I would say that's not totally correct because Henry Ford did not have a role to play in EVs. Henry Ford would have built whatever people wanted. He just came up with the assembly line idea. That's about it.
But I'm
He did
saying the
not.
the
Yeah, go
whole
ahead.
idea. Yeah, yeah. So the whole idea of having all these cars mass produced and using all these fossil fuels itself, that was kind of the whole perspective back then, and people
No,
just
but I still don't get it. How are you relating Henry Ford to EVs disappearing?
Well,
the
I think what Sugun is trying to say is that back then, I don't know the exact history, so I'm not. Don't take me out of context, but um, because back then gas and oil was cheaper, I think what he's trying to say is that it made more sense for people to buy vehicles that were operated on gas, because I think vehicles that were operating on electricity were more of high maintenance, and I think
Yeah.
I don't know if it costed much, but I think that per se that the gas and petroleum side of it was cheaper to operate and easier to use than just a standard electrical vehicle. I think that's what it's
What
trying to say.
Also,
so
also,
basically what happened? Yeah, go ahead, Sidon. Let me see what you got.
also the range as well, right, of the EV. I mean, if you
Hmm.
compare it to now and back then, the range of the EVs were not that high as well compared to using gas alternative, right? So that's why I feel like
Exactly.
people decided that we're just gonna go with gas instead. So that's why it kind of slowly just kept adding up, and then EVs kind of diminished.
Well, then
I
also, I
think I
think it
think
also comes
that's
into play that there was obviously oil companies back then, and they saw an opportunity at this, so they had a lot of money to put into it, and they were able to monopolize it. I mean, look at someone like Rockefeller. He was
Yep.
a oil tycoon back then. Basically had 85-90% control of the oil market, and then you see companies now, the conglomerate companies nowadays like Exxon, BP, Shell, that they have a lot of power and control just because they have the oil markets in their hands.
Oh yeah, I mean, these companies. I mean, you can even project their stocks. Back in the day to what it is right now. You'll see how much of an increase it has been, and that is the reliance of these vehicles for gas fueled. So I just see that these companies were just like growing and growing and growing to the point that they were just giants, and they just did not let these like EV try to take the scene of them, because then they would lose their own business, and that's not good for them, right? They want to keep power. Whoever has a lot of money, whoever is big, they always want to keep their power, and they want to make their ideas be implemented.
Yeah, I know. Um, so anyway, what was I gonna I was gonna say, so here's, so the situation is, I don't know if any of you know that in around like the early 1900s, there was a company called Stud Baker Electric. It was around like 1902 to 1912. It was based in like Indiana, and what it was basically a electrical car manufacturer at that point of time, and for being almost like over 100 years old, it was way ahead of its time. And what happened is, over time, like all these like big oil and these different companies came in and they sabotaged it by accusing it of taking some kind of illegal loan. And what happened is, over time, this company just went poof, like bankrupt. And one more thing I want to add is, did you know GM and like late 1990s to early 2000s, they made a vehicle by the name of EV1, and it was
yes.
basically in production between 1996 to 1999. And the reason they did that is because California at that point of time had a law which basically told auto manufacturers that you have to produce a certain amount of your production as EV vehicles. And what the like major manufacturers at that point of time did is they lobbied against the idea of having this like electrical vehicle being taken off at that point of time, because they knew that such a circumstance would like take a share of their profit. So in a weird way, what basically car enthusiasts, especially like environmental people, they were accusing GM for basically they created the vehicle, the EV1, and then they were accusing GM because GM not only created it but also killed it, because they're like, oh, the creation I'm doing might kill me, so I'll kill the creation so that the future I'm still like making this gas powered vehicle because I'm making a bulk load of money. But everything changed when Tesla came into the perspective, because
Elon.
Elon Musk, if he didn't do anything, let me tell you one thing: these guys will be chilling.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I think Elon kind of set that precedent, of all these companies, like GM, Ford, Toyota, all these, different major automotive companies. It kind of gave them, a kick, a wake up call, saying that we have to innovate itself, and we have to transition to this EV perspective.
I think it was also so. I know you guys are giving credit to Elon, and for sure, he's obviously a big prominent figure in the EV market. I think we also have to take a look into perspective how there's been many articles and news studies and article searches done in regards to like climate change and then people becoming more environmentally friendly, people trying to go more green. Obviously, the rise of gas prices and fossil fuels. So, I think a collection of everything coming into play, and then Elon slowly started to come in because obviously the guy was not a one hit wonder or he didn't make it overnight. He's been in the game for many years now. So obviously everything coming into perspective into play kind of made him, I guess I would say Tesla like the poster child of EV vehicles. And when everyone thinks of EV vehicles, they most to come to mind is Tesla
Tesla.
and Elon Musk.
So, well, I agree with all these points, and I mean, I still want to go back a little bit towards the history when it all started in about 1900s, when actually, as I said, the third of the vehicles were electric vehicles, and I just wanted to ask you questions. Why do you guys think it died out? Like, because as per what I read on Curbed, they say that the vehicle at that point in time in 1908, which was being produced, an EV vehicle, it would give a 100 miles range on a single charge. And also, you can install those chargers at your home and charge the vehicles overnight. And they were competing with actual gas vehicles. They were better running. They had no noise. They had no smell. Nothing. I mean, they were much better in any performance spectrum than a gas vehicle. So why do you think it died out at that point?
I'll tell you what. Like I
What?
said, at this point of time, there was like big tycoons like Carnegie, Rockefeller, and if you know about Rockefeller, he had the oil fields, but pretty much he had a
Yes.
monopoly. And what happens is like these big shot players were hesitant, were afraid of such a vehicle coming to the market because what would it really do? It would make people prone to like not basically buy liquid gas, which would technically mean that these individuals, these people that make a lot of money, won't make as much money. So they were hesitant about the fact that their money was going to be cut. So if you think about it, it's just like the theory of Nikolai Tesla in the previous episode, how Andrew Carnegie was one of his biggest investors, and that the theory that Nikola Tesla had with the tower and free source of energy was basically gonna take down Andrew Carnegie, and Andrew Carnegie was technically, in my theory, was afraid of that hypothesis coming true, so he wanted to undercut Nikola Tesla. So in a way, if you think about it, at that point of time, a lot of people did undercut other people in order to serve their advantage, and that advantage is mostly like greed. But technologically speaking, yes, it was a way advanced at its time. And what these like oil companies or big firms, what they did is at that point of time is they made people the hungry to travel longer and longer distances. And also electrical vehicles, yes, they had a 100-mile radius, but they still needed charging stations, charging ports, but there was no investments in infrastructure to place those charging stations because those charging stations were not available. So they sided with like these big oil firms because at the end of the day, these oil firms were making a lot of money from people buying their gas. Why would they make them stop?
You're correct, but I would say this: if there were, you gotta get this. At that point, automotive vehicles were still coming out. There was not a huge manufacturing going on, and there was not a lot going on in the automotive industry, anyways. So it's not just the fact that there was no infrastructure for EVs. There was no infrastructure for automotive at all. There weren't as many gas stations either. What I read about and what I came to a conclusion with, the major factor being is the the complexity of how an EV could be built. That was one major reasons, and because of its complexity, it was also complex to scale that operation to build more vehicles per year. Because at some point they were building like 200 vehicles per year, like EVs in general. And post that, the next thing what happened was Henry Ford, when he came up with the idea of assembly line, to assemble a gas car was much easier to rather than to assemble an EV car at that point.
Yeah, Harsh.
And
it was easier to produce a
Yes.
combustible engine, and also the electrical vehicle costs more than the combustible engine.
Yes,
Um,
and no, the electric vehicle only costs more after the assembly line inception. Before the assembly line, they were almost at a similar cost standpoint, so it wasn't making much sense for people to go for a gas vehicle. But then when Henry Ford started doing it with the assembly line, that's when the cost getting down lower to about $650, and that's when people actually started buying gas vehicles much more than
so
EVs.
another thing that I wanted to mention, you are right about that. Another thing I wanted to mention that because the roads back then, most of them were not paved, and I know Arrow mentioned that the infrastructure, electrical grid, and the infrastructure was not what it was now. It wasn't designed to handle all the electrical outlets and EV vehicles that we have now. But also the electrical vehicles back then, compared to the combustible engines, they were significantly slower. I mean, they were said to be anywhere from 12, reaching anywhere from 12 to 20 miles per hour, which the combustible engine could reach anywhere from, depending on the time period and the engine, but it
You're
could reach anywhere from 60 to 100 miles per hour. So there was also a big difference in that as well.
100% correct. 100% correct. But get this. When you're looking at this 60 miles per hour, you're looking at the fastest gas vehicles available at that time, and yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Again, EVs were not put in a lot of effort towards because of the complexity, and I think that's one of the major reasons it died out at that point.
Yeah,
And
I
Yeah,
agree.
the
to this day and
complexity, and
age,
then also like when consumers were comparing the two cars, they would see because, like I said, many of the roads weren't paved, so the EV vehicle wasn't doing too hot on these unpaved roads or dirt roads, and they would have a lot of issues compared to the gas vehicles. So when, and then also the infrastructure. So when consumers were comparing it, these two apples together, they would go with the one that obviously had more benefits to them per se at that moment. Obviously, looking at it from it now, the tables have turned and people are looking at more of a beneficial for having EVs than the gas engine.
Yeah. Harsh, when you said at the beginning about why Henry Ford was linked, this is the reason that I want to say it is because of his assembly line costs, right? It just makes it cheaper itself to produce all these, gas combustible vehicles compared to these EV vehicles itself. So that's kind of what I wanted to clarify. And everything like we already mentioned, right? At the end of the day, to run a successful business, it depends on the cost itself, right? So whichever one is the cheapest cost is what people do decide to go with. It doesn't matter what happens in the environment. It doesn't like people don't really care about that. At the end of the day, it is just about money. So I just want to add
you're
that.
right. I agree with that. I mean, people want what they want, and I think Sagu and I agree that he wanted to make a point, but you should have kind of
No,
got to
yeah,
there, and
I should have said it a different way, but that's
yeah.
what I meant to say because of the cost itself. So, yep.
Right. So now let's also talk about autonomous vehicles, and see where how we are driving towards the era of autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, and all the automation. How about that? What do you guys think about that?
So, did you ask our perspective on the autonomous vehicles and where we stand on it right now, or what
Yes,
perspectives are in
yes,
it?
yeah.
So, my perspective on the autonomous vehicle is very interesting because I don't think it's new, but I think it's getting a lot of attention right now because we're seeing a lot of automation features on a lot of the electrical vehicles. So before we obviously people are just driving combustion vehicles, you're driving it yourself, you're doing all the work. But now that a lot of these companies are starting to add these autonomous features, and there's different levels to it. I did some research. I think there's like they have level 0 all the way to level 5, but we can see all these companies adding features such as like self parking, self braking, safety features. There's even with Tesla they can that drive feature when the I forgot the autonomous feature when they're driving on the highway where all you have to do is make sure you keep your hands on the steering wheel for like 30 seconds, but yet the GPS will guide the vehicle towards its destination while it's on the highway. So I think the autonomous features that are going to be added to vehicle, whether they're going to be partially autonomous or fully autonomous, is going to be a great thing because I also think it's going to provide a lot of safety features for people because we as humans tend to make mistakes, and with those mistakes cause a lot of injuries and deaths on the highways.
That's pretty agreeable. Um, so do you know where all this where did the race start? Like where did the so now we talked about the inception of EV. Are you guys aware of where did the inception of autonomous vehicles started? How did it all take in action?
Like when it first started,
Yeah,
the time.
when it first started, like what was the first public event when everyone was exposed to the autonomous side of vehicles?
Yeah, from my research, I saw that it was I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the 1980s. When there was like I believe it's like the Carnegie Mellon University lab. That's when they first kind of, publicly showed it. So
But what
I
was
did.
the what did I'm not aware of what did they do at the Carnegie Mellon 1980s? What was that?
So basically, in terms of that's when they showed the actual, like it was just the appearance itself, right? The whole, concept and idea of the autonomous vehicles was within that, it was within that experiment that they did in that university. So, and that's when it appeared. That's when it
I
first
see.
concepted. Yeah.
I see.
So
Well,
I think there was
I was
also
more so.
there's
Yeah, go
also
ahead.
sorry not to interrupt. I think there was also some autonomous models created before that. I think it was in the 1920s or 30s. I think at the World's Fair. I think GM might have been one of the first manufacturers to create a somewhat self-driving car model. I think they used a radio-controlled operating system to create this type of autonomous vehicle. But from what I saw in the pictures, it looked basically like a rover that they sent on the moon and Mars, which actually kind of I think actually led to the development of these rovers that they would send in space on the moon and Mars to scout and explore the different features of the other planets. But I think it was G and maybe Harsh, you want to add something to that? I don't know if I stand corrected or if you had something else to say, but I
I
think that's what I.
was I was more so gonna add towards the line of a public event. These were mostly the events that you guys are talking about were mostly when people generated ideas and showed concepts of an autonomous car and how it would look like in the
Yes.
future, what would be expect out of those. So these are mostly just portrays of what people expect and what we could do.
Yeah.
Like a concept car is what this
Yeah.
kind of was. I was
Exactly.
more so referring towards a competition that was done by DARPA. You guys know DARPA, right? The organization that also developed the internet.
Oh yeah.
So
DARPA is that
it's
Yeah, I
military?
thought it
yeah,
was
it's a
a thing.
defense advanced
Yeah.
Yeah,
research
yeah.
projects agency. That's what it is. So they
I
also developed the internet, and so they had this challenge in 2005. I think that's probably when it took first place. It took place first in 2005 for it's called the DARPA Grand Challenge, and then driverless car competition. So that's where they had anyone around the world from around the world come down there, be it universities, students, private funded projects, companies, whoever wants to come down there, come in there, get a car in, and make a driverless car that would go over different terrains, like off-roading, manned, unmanned, places with obstacles. That's probably one of the major showcases initially. That exposed the general public a lot to autonomous vehicles and driverless cars.
I see. So
That
it
was
kind
one
of
of the
gave
major, yeah, one of the
it kind of
major milestones.
Yeah, so it kind of gave the, like, I guess, other people like inspiration that maybe, yeah, we can do something with EV. Sorry, not EVs, like
Yes.
the autonomous side of things. S-
Autonomous. It was not so. So now that you mentioned, now that I see you getting confused there. Let's also identify two different races. So there's one race where all the companies are competing for EVs, and the other one is autonomous. So there's like two different realms. Autonomous can survive without EV, and EV can survive without autonomous. They
Yep.
both necessarily do not have to go hand in hand. Autonomous
But
is a
right
total
now it
different
is.
spectrum.
Yeah.
Well,
But right.
it's not even right now. It's not surviving hand in hand. Like as we saw, EVs have been existing since 1900s. So that doesn't mean autonomous vehicles were present in 1900s.
Oh no, no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying that is they're both like integrated right now. That's what I'm saying. Like
Yes,
EVs
they're
and
integrated right now. I mean, even gas vehicles are integrated with autonomous features. Even our gas vehicles in this
yep,
day and age are equipped with a lot of autonomous features.
yep,
You call it anything. I mean, emergency braking, crash assist, lane assist, adaptive cruise control. All these are assisted driver systems. But I mean, I know they're not fully autonomous, but still,
yeah.
they're supporting our drives in daily lives.
Yep. And I think it's good for the audience to know it themselves. Like we don't use the terms like EVs and autonomous like, synonymously. We're trying to it's completely different things, right? It's completely
Yeah.
different timeline, different races, different ways that, this was, accomplished to what it is today. So, we just want to let the audience know that there is a
Well,
significant.
or for y'all, haven't heard from Arrow in a little bit. What's going on, Arrow? You got 2 cents to put in?
I think he's driving an autonomous car. I mean, no, he's in an autonomous. So,
Chilling in the car. That's
yeah,
nice.
while not
Well,
driving.
well,
Yo, 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 yo.
we can't hear you. Is
You can hear me?
we're curious where Arrow is. What's going on with
I'm
Arrow?
here, bro.
Yeah, I mean we gotta hear from you, Arrow.
All
Every
right.
once in a
Hero.
while, you gotta put her 20 cents in, man.
So, actually, I was actually involved in electrical vehicle, and that's was like the electrical Mustang program. And one of the things that was an issue with the electrical vehicle program that I was working at that point of time was the battery. So if you noticed, these electrical vehicles like Tesla, Lucid, Neo, and let's just for
What
example
about
say
the one that you drove, Arrow? The Ford, the Mustang Mach-E.
I never got to drive it. That's the
Oh,
funny
you
part.
never. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
they
should.
put me
You
in the
should.
bad. They put me in the closet.
So,
But
so
what?
you're telling me you got to work at Ford, but never got to, interact with the
Nope.
Mach-E itself?
No, nah. I was just working in the numbers, looking at what the situation is, but I didn't
So
really
here,
drive the car.
we were actually stirring around in the topic of the differences between EV and autonomous. Like there's two different races for companies. They're following EVs and autonomous. They don't both go hand in hand, but they're pretty much integrated in today's day and age. And also, autonomous cars are also integrated a lot with gas vehicles, not necessarily just EVs. But and then now we're gonna let's start talking about how the transformation is happening. Um, what are the automation levels and what are the obstacles in transformation that we're seeing and what kind of issues are these major automakers facing. So you guys got something on that?
Well, here's the thing: people with autonomous vehicles, they're still like it's too early. They need to build that trust because they're still hesitant about a system taking over and driving them.
Yeah, if
Well, I
Arrow
think we
doesn't.
don't even have a system right now. We don't even have infrastructure to support autonomous vehicles, or even if we had an autonomous vehicles, it would only survive in a specific environment. We don't have a vehicle that would survive anywhere.
Like if you really think about it, if every car is autonomous itself, it's like there's that specific structure, right? If something goes out of line, I don't know if the autonomous, like the sensors and everything, is going to detect it properly. It might
So
take
here, let me.
it's going to take a lot of
Yo, yo, yo! Guys, don't also forget. It's not just the battle of autonomous and EV. It's also like it's also a battle of influence right now because the one thing I was looking into EVs is this whole EV phenomenon didn't take over until like fully focused with like the rise of China and specifically their focus on EV.
Sure, China's a big player in the EV market right now, and I mean I can talk. I mean just alone, I think it was 40% of their sales is of their car sales are EV. So China's a big leading
The
electric car
largest,
vehicle market.
yeah, the leading EV company right now is from China.
which is.
I think it's BYD. That's what the company's called.
BYD. Well, don't they have a lot of? They have different other companies. Don't they got like Neo,
Yep.
They have different
NIO?
companies, but I think BYD is world's leading electric car company right now. They have surpassed the sales and production of EVs from Tesla or any other companies.
Oh yeah, 100%. And one in five cars that are sold across China are EVs. So China is a big competitor in the market, and not only that, but China and Europe are big competitors. Actually, Norway's is is number two, but top in Europe at least 54% of their car sales in 2020 to now have been through EV sales. What's actually lacking is United States. They're lacking in EV sales. I know it's been getting a little bit bigger right now, but currently right now, only 1% of United 1% of United States cars are actually EVs, and there's around projected around 250 million cars that are on the road in America. But they're trying to
Oh
get better
yeah.
and better with that. But within the last few years, only I think it was like between 2.5 to 5% of sales in the last 2 years have been EVs. I mean, it's been steadily growing, but not by much compared to other markets across the world.
Yeah.
And
Europe has
actually,
a huge EV market. Like Europe has a lot of EV cars at that point. I don't know the facts, but they're about the
they do,
Europe
and I think
market.
it's
But
also because the law has passed that I think by
yes,
2026, all new vehicles sold by them have to be fully electric. Otherwise,
electric. Yeah.
I don't think they're going to even let you sell. I know they're probably going to stamp a penalty on the companies, but I don't even think they're going to even let them sell combustible engines after
Yep.
2026. So,
Exactly.
They are pushing for the transformation pretty hard.
Yep.
oh,
And if you compare to the US itself, right? I mean, you look at California, they're only going to, pass the mandate of ending gasoline cars by 2035. So you guys see the time frame of compared to
I think it
Europe.
has to do a little bit more with. There's also politics involved. Don't get it wrong. It's not just the fact that everyone wants to be environmentally friendly. There's also politics involved. A lot of companies backing money and lobbying. Politicians voting with these. I mean, I don't want to get into this whole shebang, but I think there's a lot of things going behind the scenes. But like I said, slowly steady, United States is not in the front of the race like they were. When they wanted to be back then in the space race or trying to be like number one country in the world. I think a lot of countries have come into play and they're trying to take over as the number one spot. I actually wanted to go back to Harsh's point in regards to the level of autonomous vehicle and also how Arrow mentioned, yes, right now people are they wouldn't trust an AI fully running their car just because we as humans are afraid of the unknown and we don't know how well full automation is going to perform. But also, I forgot who it was I mentioned. We don't even have the infrastructure to support a full autonomous fleet of vehicles operating on the
Oh
road.
yeah, totally. We don't. We
Yeah,
don't. Not at all.
so as I mentioned real quick, and I can let Shaguna Harsh, you guys can take over and mention whatever you got to mention. But real quick, so as I mentioned earlier, there are six different levels of automation. It starts from level zero. So
Zero
I
to
don't know if you want to call,
five.
yeah, zero
Yep.
to five.
Zero
Yeah.
to
So level zero being no driving automation at all. You're just driving like regular every day. You handle
Yes.
accelerating, braking, parking, and then you have level one being driver assistance, and then partial driving automation, blah 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 blah, so on to all the way to level five being full autonomous. But
Full
from what I
autonomous.
researched that to is actually through if you guys can take a look at it through JD Power. I know everyone knows what JD Power is. They do a
Mhm.
lot of sponsoring for cars, so it's a pretty big company. They actually state that they give a full breakdown that after a level three, which is conditional driving, so far the United States cannot handle that infrastructure. And so far, we're not really at that point yet because that level three starts when the car will be self-driving and technically you can be doing anything else in the car, like whether it's reading a book or falling asleep or doing some other multitasking work. But again, like I said, we are not at that level of infrastructure and of that technology yet that we could handle this type of conditional driving automation at the moment.
No, you're correct. That's what I was saying. I mean, that's totally correct. We don't have the infrastructure yet to support full autonomous. Well, you know what? Let's I'm gonna steer the topic towards how the what's the transformation going on. The major let's recognize some major companies here. See what they're doing, their milestones, and what kind of long term plans do we have, and switch from EV. Because I know from any other country to transform to EV, it's going to be the hardest to switch to EV for America.
Yeah. I totally agree with that.
And now
I mean,
when we recognize there's two races, we also have two transformations as well. Transformation to transform our infrastructure to support EVs, and another to support to have supporting infrastructure for autonomous vehicles.
Yeah. I want to add, since you said like the major companies, I have like strong associations with General Motors. So they're actually planning to, introduce.
By associations, you mean you work for General Motors?
Yes,
Okay, just
yeah, I
want
just
You made it sound like you were big shot. Like you had like
yeah, you made it
25%
sound like
share of the
you're
company.
literally running GM.
yeah, General Motors. So they're planning to produce 30 EVs by 2025. They have the zero emissions. That kind of policy, and we're basically what we're trying to. I'll say we. I just wanted to say GM, but what we're planning to do is we're planning to build more than 1 million electric vehicles in North America alone. So we're steering in that process. We have the electric Corvettes. We have the electric Chevy. I believe it's the one of the SUVs, the Equinox. Sorry, the Chevy Equinox by 2024. That's going to be electric as well. So we're planning to
Well,
shift all the gas combustion vehicles to electric vehicles.
you know what? The Stellantis CEO Carlos, he commented that if we keep going at the same pace towards the switch of EVs, we're gonna have faced some real problems by 2025 in the manufacture of batteries and in general in the overall production. Like supply chain is already broken. It hasn't healed back up from the COVID cutback, and it's still heating up, and we still don't have supplies enough to support our battery
Yeah,
production, and we don't
and
even
that
have
was
those elements and minerals to mine out of them. Like we're short act like we're not just short in the production or in supply chain, we're short of those minerals in general. Like
and
as
that's
Earth is
that's
short.
that's gonna be a problem itself. And I know that we haven't mentioned this, but with the chip shortage too, we had that whole issue happening.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
mean even right now, I mean let's be real. All of us here work in automotive. So like
yeah,
all of
let's
us
make that clear. Let's
working I mean not just all of us on the podcast like the host, but even in general,
yeah,
most of the our work population, like automotive was one of the major revolutions in America back in 1910s, 30s, the whole time. Like automotive was the major supporting factor, the driving factor in
yeah,
the whole America's success. Like even till date, America is totally dependent upon automotive. Like we
yeah. I mean,
cannot survive without roads, we cannot survive without cars. Like there's no way America survives without cars. No way.
yeah, and the thing is, like, I've lived in multiple countries, so I used to live in Canada as well. There's
Mhm.
more of like public transportation, not that much use of cars. But when I came to America, when I came to, like, let's say the North, Michigan, which is, the I guess the capital city of like the capital state, I guess Detroit, right? The Motor City.
Mhm.
That's what I
A
meant to
Motor
say.
City, that's what it's called, the Motor City. Yeah.
The Motor City, right? So when I come here, it's like all cars, right? Everything is relied. Anywhere that you go, it's vehicles. Like anything that you do, it's like having a car is like having legs. If you think
Yeah,
about
I
you
it,
know.
literally can't do anything in
you
Michigan without
literally
a car.
cannot
Without a
do.
car, you can't do it. Yeah,
You can,
I mean, I came in here, I didn't have a car, I couldn't do shit for nothing.
yeah,
Like, literally, I
and
was
you
just
feel
sitting
like
in the
you're in
apartment.
trouble. You feel like you're in trouble because I thought like my mentality was that, oh, you know what, maybe I could use a bus, but good luck with that. It's all about going from point A to point B. Oh, using this car. Oh, where are you like
Hmm.
how are you gonna drive this? Like what car are you gonna use? Everyone kept asking me that question, right? So it's the heavily reliance of what Harsh is saying of the U.S. with cars is what's what's like the significant. It's very significant in this country itself. So many people that I know personally are working in automotive, companies
Yeah,
such
well,
as
that's because the big three are in Michigan, so obviously the big three are the most established, and obviously Michigan was well known for being an automotive sector. Whereas if you go look in like California's or even Texas right now being becoming a big boom is more looked at as like tech centers and a lot of rising new startups, things of that nature. But just in general, United States as a whole, compared to the infrastructure, the road infrastructure in regards to United States and Europe, is complete. This is kind of going a little off topic, but the roads are completely different. Like United States, I know like major cities have like transportation as far as like trains and buses, but if you go to like the suburbs and outer cities, there really isn't major transportation. Whereas in Europe, there's major transportation. Everything's pretty much almost walking distance, or you can find anything in walking distance. But the United States, you need a car to to get from point A to point B, whether it's grocery shopping, school, things of that nature. The
When
big
you
factor.
were talking about distances and go from here to there, that kind of driven my thoughts towards the range on these EVs. And now that I'm thinking, I recently came across, or it's these. Have you heard about these new batteries that scientists have come up with? These are called the radioactive diamond batteries.
No, I have
Have you
not.
heard about those?
Sounds interesting.
They don't need to be charged for 1,000 years, is what they claim.
Really.
Wait, so
Yeah,
radioactive
so
batteries?
What's the catch though?
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There must be
So
some kind of.
What?
there's
Right.
not even a catch. They're basically made out of nuclear waste. You know, the nuclear power plants, they produce nuclear waste. So basically, what we do right now is nuclear waste is we dump it and wait for it to decay. And the half life of the nuclear waste is I don't know, a million years, 1,000 years.
Mm,
And
yeah.
these batteries are being powered by the nuclear waste, and it's
Oh,
actually a specific reaction that's called beta decay of the nuclear waste is what it's called. And I mean, it's pretty interesting. It's
yeah.
pretty
What?
It
interesting.
sounds interesting, but the thing is, what I'm looking at, because I do know that obviously there are nuclear power plants, and United States military obviously operates nuclear submarines and nuclear aircraft carriers. But when I'm looking at this is that's interesting, but it's also you're going to have everyone basically from you to your neighbors, to everyone down the block is going to have radioactive material in their vehicle. Now, I'm sure they can find a way to keep everything intact and stop things from leaking, but what if there's like an accident? Or what if you take it for like a repair at a shop or a dealership and someone accidentally hits it the wrong way, or loosens up a screw that they really weren't paying attention to,
Yeah,
that they need to be loosening, and there's like a leak, and then you start leaking, radioactive material waste. I think that
toxins.
sounds like a good idea, but I generally personally don't believe that will be something that will be enacted upon, just because I think there's a lot of risk involved in that. Like I said, there's aircraft carriers that operate um, on nuclear power, but then again, you're comparing 10 aircraft carriers that are sailing in the open seas where there's not traffic, to millions of vehicles that are operating, several feet to several inches apart, which can play a lot of risk in
You
that.
know what? You know what's gonna happen? Godzilla is gonna be created when when someone accidentally hits the battery in the wrong way because it's radioactive.
Wait, what do you mean Godzilla's going to be created?
Godzilla.
If
How
you
does?
know if you know the story of Godzilla, Godzilla was okay. If you're familiar with the movie Godzilla or King Kong, they were I don't know about King Kong, but Godzilla's focus they were created because of radioactive materials. But that's just a joke. Continue on.
Although,
I was gonna say that what Franz is saying about the radioactive waste and everything, that's completely true because the whole, like, let's say we as a whole population adopt this nuclear car, anything can go wrong and you're just leaving the general public in in a problem. You have that nuclear the waste coming to your skin or something. It could cause you like cancer or something like that, right? So you don't want to be exposed to that risk. So personally myself, I don't want that near me.
Well,
Because
I
that
look at
those
it this way. I
batteries
look
right
at
now
it.
are still on prototype,
Hmm.
so they're
Right,
still
it's still a
not being
prototype, but
used in any
I look at it
devices.
this way. Look at it this way. Back then, like, I mean, it's happened throughout human history. I'm sure it's happening now, but there's been always human error that hasn't been noticed until many years or decades later. Like back then, when people were working without harnesses. I mean, that's generally speaking, that's a no-brainer. You're working without harness on high buildings. If you fall, you're dead. But people were working with hazardous materials in factories, and they didn't know that these hazardous materials were going to lead to, cancers, or they were dealing with asbestos and paint, and they were painting houses, and it didn't take for whatever it was so many decades for people to figure out, oh, this is causing like health issues, this and that, and what nature. So I know it's a prototype, but I feel like if they start creating something like this wasted radioactive material to put and fuel cars, while I think it might be a good idea, you don't really know if it's going to be leaking or whatnot because no one has the right tools and equipment to be checking every single vehicle and making sure nothing's leaking and whatnot. And who knows what that could have an effect after 10, having that car for 5 years or 10 years and whatnot. And you also have to look at the weather conditions too, like in Michigan or the northern states it snows, it gets icy. What if like people when they're spraying salts, the salt starts grinding away at the material and it creates some sort of leak. So I think there's a lot of things that come into play and too many variables. And I think that person would be a risk. I don't think it would be a good idea. I'm no expert, but I'm just basing on opinions and from what I know in regards to like nuclear
See,
waste and
I
a bunch of
understand the
variables.
concerns that you have. I
There's
understand the
there's
concerns that you have.
hazardous there's a
But
hazard.
I don't think it's gonna be that big of a deal. I mean, it is. See, here's the thing. Everything has advancement in it. Every equipment that we've been using so far has advanced from the time that we started using it. Everything has changed.
Yeah, you have
It
to
has
start from
become,
somewhere.
it has,
You do
yeah,
have
it has become more complex. Everything has become more complex. Even cars have become way much more complex that a common man cannot just work on his own car. It's got so much electronics involved in it. Like,
yeah.
look at the video games. Like older video games, you just had a small little motherboard. Look at a
Play
PS5 now. It's got a bunch of transistors in there, like millions and millions of transistors in there. So everything has to change. Everything has to become complex, and that's the rule. That's the rule of it. So I think
It's
with these batteries coming in, I'm pro to that. I'm pro to these batteries. Like I'll be like, okay, I'll accept that change, and I'll be pro to these diamond batteries if ever I get the chance to use them in a car. Because I'm pretty sure no one, all those concerns that exposed France, they probably are going to be taken care of.
Yeah, like what Harsh is saying, there's always a start to everything. There's also advancements, all these, different factors that are going to be added to make it as efficient and, make sure that it works. There's like before it's released to the public anyways, they're probably going to do tests and all that. So it's not like what we're saying that, people are just going to, be, exposed to all this nuclear waste and
Yeah,
stuff.
but they were doing tests back then when they were selling paint and it had asbestos in it, and look at what happened to hundreds of
Yep,
thousands of people getting lung
you're
cancer.
correct.
So
That
You're
is true, but
correct. I understand.
at the
100%
end of the
agree.
day, the power of money can change a thought.
money does rule the world, but what I'm saying is that it's over time, right? Over time is what is
I
innovation
look
in
at it this way. I mean, if you have renewable, if you can like just charge your car every like once or 2 weeks with using electricity or renewable energy, why not have it that way? Then than playing it safe than putting wasted
But that's
radioactive material in your car.
But that's the thing. Again, to do that, you're going to create new infrastructure, new things, which are probably going to get manufactured, and everything that gets manufactured leaves
I mean,
carbon footprints
infrastructure,
in the
but yeah, but
behind.
infrastructure is going to have to be created either way because especially if cars are going to be fully autonomous and whatnot, you're going to have to create infrastructure either way. So why not
We're going
have
to need
it?
raw
Have,
material, so we're going to need to process the raw material to do what you're saying. So right now, we already have a bunch of abundance of that raw material. That's the radioactive waste. Now, when we have that, we could use it. I mean, why not? Why not use it? And
sure,
we
but then
haven't talked
you
about
have to
one
mine
major
for
thing.
the raw material to create the shell that's going to enclose the
the
radioactive material.
Yeah,
uranium.
I mean,
You have to mine.
exactly. We're probably gonna do. I mean, obviously we're gonna do that. Now, in both the cases, we're gonna use raw material to do that. So I'm just saying, why not go away? That's much more sustainable. Like these batteries are sustainable for hundreds of years, whereas the life of a rechargeable station is not 100 years or a couple hundred years. Let me say that because
Also,
these are gonna last like way longer than that.
I don't know if you guys know, but there's this like concept car called the Ford Nucleon. I don't know
Hmm.
if you guys heard of that.
No,
So
I
that was
don't think I've heard of that.
this was like a concept developed by Ford in 1957. So
Hmm.
they want to they would this was going to be as the first nuclear powered car itself. And what they said is that this vehicle, like this is their envisioning, right? This is the whole concept, this whole idea itself. They want to get 5,000 miles out of it. So that's insane itself. like this whole idea of putting that nuclear I believe it's like fission, right? Fission or fusion
Wait,
to
would you say they want to get
Fission
5,000 miles out of what?
so they
out
want
of a
like
nuclear
the radio,
powered
oh
car.
yeah, the radioactive power car.
It
They
was a
want to get
concept in 1950s, is what he's saying. Like Ford
yeah,
had a car, Nucleon, that
Mm,
was a
yeah, it's
concept
okay.
car that did that. Well, you know
I
what? Let's oh,
yeah.
let's I think we have steered our conversations way far out now. Let's kind of talk about a little bit over the infrastructure issues that we're gonna have, and the carbon footprints that we talk about when with gas vehicles and EV vehicles. I mean, I think they both leave a significant amount of carbon footprints because even an EV vehicle has to be manufactured, and the materials involved in the manufacturing an EV vehicle are far more complex to produce and has more process involved in it that it leaves almost similar amount of carbon footprints as a manufacturing of a gas vehicle does.
I think that is true itself. The fact that we have EVs itself, we also have to be aware that they're battery powered, right? And to actually get the battery itself, I mean the amount of work that you're going to need to do, the amount of I guess in terms of environment itself, the carbon footprint itself, it's gonna be pretty similar in my opinion. So there is always in the media it portrays that oh EV, oh this is clean, that's what everyone says, all these news articles and everything, right? But there's always some kind of trade-off that you have to sacrifice in order to have the EVs in the first place.
And to add to that point, I think the major issue that our people are seeing with EVs is mostly is it bad for the environment because you have to mine lithium, and not only is lithium used in the batteries, but there's also materials such as what is it called, cobalt, and
Cobalt,
yeah,
yep.
exactly. So like, you know, mining lithium, it's a long and long production. You have to filter it, and there's salts. And what if the wastewater gets dumped in a river or gets contaminated, the soil around it, and starts seeping into the water system? Same with
Oh no,
cobalt.
there's harmful waste. Let's conclude that there's like harmful waste that comes off of these processes. That's
Yeah,
again not
there's
not good
always
at all.
waste. Yeah, there's always waste coming off, and then also with cobalt. I mean, if it just gets mixed in with air or water, it creates sulfuric acid, which obviously we know that's anything with acid is not good
Right?
for our human health.
Oh
So I think the issue is that the cars are generally made for good intentions. However, the production line behind it, there are some toxicities in the environment, which at the end of the day, the environment is going to affect the plants that people are going to eat, and also the people in the area. And the issue is that a lot of these mining places are done outside the United States. China being a major production of it. I think there's also in Argentina, and it comes down to that a lot of these manufacturers are getting supplies for them. However, we don't know what kind of regulation the government is having on these production facilities. Like, do they have
I don't think a lot of them are
not
regulated.
much in my
exactly that?
opinion,
We
not
don't
much.
know. We don't know what they're doing. For all we know, they don't really care about, because they're gonna have to spend money to take care of the waste that they're producing, and some of them might be. I know it's happening in the United States, let alone in these other countries where we don't know what's going on. So they could be like, "Hey, I don't want to pay to have this wastewater taken care of, or these waste or hazardous materials," and they could just be dumping it and not really be caring what's happening to the environment. And
Exactly.
it might not be in effect within a couple years, but down the road, decades from now, it could have a major effect on the soil around the area or on the people, or it could be just transferred for miles on end, and it could be devastating for not only just the environment, but for the natural habitat and the animals, and also for the humans.
Also, Franz, I want to add, when you mentioned about the sulfuric acid itself, and it goes into the atmosphere and then comes down as acid rain. And I don't know if you guys seen the whole, the forest, what happens when acid rain comes. You like over time period of time, that forest is completely it's depleted itself. All the trees, leaves, and everything. The wildlife
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
living there are gone because of the fact that you have this kind of acidity coming like falling from the sky. I think even us it minorly affects as well the acid rain. So
We've talked about how it
closing,
affects the environment. Let's also talk about how it affects the. I'm sorry, Segun, I'm cutting you off. It's good
oh,
because
no worries.
we're getting pretty long, you know. But we also got to talk about the economics and how the infrastructure is gonna look like for EVs, like the mechanic shops, like who's going to be able to work on it, or is it going to be that simple? Is it going to be that safe of an environment to work on it? Because again, we're dealing with high voltages here, whereas on
Yeah.
a gas vehicle, as long as it's not running, it's totally safe. The only time it's unsafe is when it's turned on, and you could still diagnose it when it's turned off and see what's wrong with it. But on an EV, I don't know how that works out. But still, you're dealing with a battery that has high voltages. I know you can shut a battery off. There's always a cutoff switch, um, still, what happens if it's in an accident where you can't shut it off, where the switch itself gets broken down? So what happens then? Or the battery has some malfunctioning, some faulty issues. Like there's also this one fun fact that do you know? So like just like Formula One, there's E Formula, and in E Formula, when a driver crashes, they're not. I think the driver is not allowed to touch the car until the safety car and the rescue team gets there to get the driver out of the car so that they can ground the
Really
car before. Yes, because they're dealing with such high voltages. Because get this, Formula cars are going at a speed of 250 miles an hour, and to achieve 250 miles an hour out of a battery, that has to be pretty high voltage. It cannot be just a regular battery that Tesla or Lucid has. No way.
interesting,
That's what goes on
interesting.
in there. Yes.
I didn't really
Um,
know. Also, I want to add. So, like, if we compare like Michigan itself, right, the infrastructure of Teslas, like how many shops are there anyways? Like, there's only like one or two from what I know. Like one in like the north side, and then one in like I think there's one other location itself. So how is that going to, like, in the future, how is that going to increase? Like, if someone has a problem with their Tesla, right? Let's say it just breaks down. Do they drive, like, I don't know, like 50, 60 miles to you get it fixed? Because you have to get it fixed. I mean, by law, it's
Yeah,
recommended to go to a Tesla shop, right? To go
there's
and fix it. You don't want other people. You don't want to rely on someone to fix your electric vehicle, right? Some, like, I guess, like a mechanic, like repair shop, like what we do with our like gas vehicles itself. You could just go to your local shop and get it taken care of.
yeah. So that's the thing. There's I think you're right. One or two major Tesla dealers or certified mechanic shops in Michigan right now. And I'm not sure how it's looking like for other states, but we're looking at a transformation in the economy and infrastructure because right now all these cars right now are combustible gas engines. They're all these mechanic shops are doing oil change. They're doing oil change, air filters, exchange, things of that nature, just running a typical business. And then we have gas stations. So, what is going to happen to these gas stations? Obviously, we're going to have to increase the infrastructure for EV vehicles that your local dealership could be handling things of that nature. And what's going to happen to these gas stations and mechanic shops? Well, you can't really just put people out of business. So there's going to have to be some, I don't know whether it's government intervention or these corporations working with these like small companies to transform these into either it's going to be electrical vehicle repair shops or they can do both EV repairs and combustible repairs and the gas station having both, like, obviously down the road is going to be most likely full EVs, but whether they can have charging stations there so they can supply or supply both the gas for regular people that have just combustible cars and for people that need superchargers for their Tesla or Lucids. And then I think it also comes down to the point of Europe is going to change to all electrical vehicles by 2026 in the United States. I think it was sometime 2030, 35. God knows when it's going to happen. But what is really going to happen to all these gas combustion vehicles, all these gas engines? Are people just going to throw them away? Are they going to be like collector's
that's
pieces?
actually one great point that I wonder about too. Like, what's going to happen to all these gas vehicles? Are they going to get converted to EVs? Are they going to
Yeah,
get recycled? I mean, again, we spent a lot of resources, a lot of material to develop these cars, and it's a lot of scrap metal once we have all the EV converted to. So I mean,
yeah.
shit,
It's
I
just
mean,
that's
it could be
a
used.
lot of
It could be
trash.
used for a lot of. I mean, it could. I'm sure they can recycle the vehicles and use them for whether recyclable for reason for other parts they can make and whatnot. But it's gonna leave a lot of gap because there's millions and millions of vehicles. Just like I said, I think there's over just 250 million reported vehicles in the United States alone. There might be a little bit more, not including
You know,
cars that are in the junkyards.
one thing that I'm worried about the most, even more so than the vehicle itself, is the tires.
You say
Yeah,
the
Because tires
tires.
don't get, yeah,
tires.
the tires don't get recycled. They don't get recycled.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah,
But
that's
can't you take the tires that you have and then just put them in the electric
Well,
vehicle?
I
that's the
isn't there.
thing. Not
There's
all the
I think
tires
that I've
are in
heard of a
great
startup
condition.
companies. I've heard of startup companies trying to figure out ways to. I don't know if it was recycle the tires, but reuse them in sort of different ways. I don't know too much information about that, but I've heard of
But
some form
I
along the
understand
lines.
that even though there's like, let's say there's like five companies, who do end up recycling tires. How are they going to make an impact? The whole world. Do you imagine how many tires do we use in the whole world? It's not just automotive vehicles that we use tires on. We use them on agricultural tech. We use them on construction equipment. We use them on trolleys, carts, trailers, everything. Everything has tires on them, and all of
We
them are made from that
need,
same material. So like
yeah,
imagine the amount of tires we have.
oh, a
But yeah, you
lot.
know what? I mean, that's a great conversation. That's a great discussion about EVs and autonomous cars and how um how it's going on with it. But I mean, I'm thinking let's end it right here. It's getting kind of pretty long about what our general podcasts are. And again, I'm gonna,
Podcast length,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot more. I mean, the EV market and the
we
whole
still have a
whole
lot more to talk about. I'll be honest. We
we
still
can
have
talk
a
about
lot more
this
that we
for
can talk.
another hour, another
this
2 hours.
this could have gone another for sure easily
Yeah.
30 minutes if not 45 minutes. I mean there's a lot, whether it's dealing with the infrastructure, with the economics, with the environmental side
Yes.
of it, the benefits, the pros, the cons. I mean it's never ending.
Yeah,
Yeah. This
Personally, I
this
mean just
debate is never ending.
yeah, I mean personally, just
it
in
is.
my opinion, I think for sure EVs are going to be the future. I'm really excited to see. I'm gonna be honest. I don't really like the Tesla models. They look pretty crappy as far as their design on the outside. I've seen Lucid and also the GM Hummer truck. I really like those body designs. So I'm really excited to see what kind of more designs are going to be included in the future, and also for like the autonomous part of it. So it's going to be interesting to see how, because everyone's really focused on driving right now, but it's going to be interesting to see 20 30 years down the road, if we're going to have fully autonomous vehicles, and who knows, maybe people are going to just forget how to drive overall, and you're not even going to have to get a driver's license. But I'm
Or
definitely excited to see what's in the future.
people could just be sleeping, in the car,
But let
and then
me let me let me let me tell you that. I'll be honest. All this conversion that they talk about, the 2024, 2030, all this is way much ambitious. All this is going to take much more time than
I think
these
even
dates
more.
are very unrealistic.
I think more
Very
like 2050,
unrealistic.
2060 or something like that because I think there's still a lot
2050, 2060, you could say that for autonomous, but EV conversion, I think, is going to be way before that. Like maybe like 2040,
yeah.
2045,
Yeah,
somewhere
bro.
around there.
2060 is a good. The real question is, are we gonna be alive by then? We
I mean,
haven't found
well,
the top of
you
the
know
roof.
what? There is a
Not
podcast
not
that we talked
not with
about.
that negative mindset.
We're gonna find the fountain of youth, and we're gonna stay alive.
Speaking
We're
of
gonna
which, you should tell the people to listen to that episode. What it was about the aging the age.
the immortality podcast episode that we did.
Yeah,
So I mean, it depends on certain people, but yeah, please listen to that as well since we've already talked about it. So I think, in my opinion itself, I'm really excited for the EVs itself. I mean, I've driven a couple EV vehicles, so I really like how the torque works, and I really just like the whole concept of EVs itself and automation. So I'm really excited, looking forward, and hopefully I get to own one in the future as well. That's my goal.
Well, with that note, let's call it a podcast and let's end it right here. I would say to our audience, go follow us, like us, share the podcast. Give us some feedback. Drop down any comments below. Let us read some of those comments. Go check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, Spotify. Like us on Spotify. Subscribe us on Apple Podcasts. Listen to us on Apple Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Go check us out on all social media. We're everywhere. Everywhere. So yeah, go ahead, check
And
us out. Listen to our
uh,
podcast. Give us some feedback. Yeah, go ahead, Fran. Arrow.
also, if any of the audience, they can please give a comment to Sagun for repeating, a couple times. I
Yeah,
highly appreciate it.
$1 for every I would be able to afford a Tesla right now. So
I
just
just find out, there's another word. It's itself that we're. So there's two now. It's
if we,
and itself.
if we combine in itself, then I could probably afford like a nice lucid car.
You
Guess you
probably
get
So
$1 for everything.
afford all the EVs, I'm sure, with all the you knows and itself that
maybe
you said.
the entire EVs that are created. So
But
yes.
yeah,
But
all
hey,
right. Well,
again,
yeah, thank you
yeah, go
everyone.
ahead.
I appreciate everyone for joining us in. And like I said, there was more to talk about. We just can't fit so much information in such a short amount of time. But be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow us. Maybe we'll do another recap or a part two on this episode down the road. I don't know. You guys let us know what you'd like. Maybe we can do some more discussions about it. But yeah, again, want to thank everyone for joining in, and we'll see you guys next time.